So, yay. Just let me know when the chat's up. The Substack chat is up, Sarah, please.
I'm just watching for it.
Jinx, I love your blue headphones, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, these are my League of Legends headphones.
Oh, League of Legends.
All right, we're live.
You know, I have an ex who is the senior executive director of infrastructure at Riot.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so if you want League Bucks, I can get you League Bucks. But
always. I haven't played in a while, though.
The other funny part is my sister is an executive at Bethesda. So if you want Skyrim and that kind of shit, I can get you free Skyrim shit.
You know, I only played Skyrim like one time, and I just never got into it.
Yeah,
my kid has over 600 hours invested in that since 2020.
Oh gosh.
So do we have people? Do we have people, Sarah?
The only one I see other than Brandon is Patrick Daniels, aka Cromulent One.
Okay, cool. All right, we have people. All right, so welcome everybody to another day of Trauma Talk. So for today's Trauma Talk, we're going to talk about pleasure after trauma. So one of the big issues as a queer person, or that we face as a queer person, is how do we handle experiencing pleasure or intimacy after coming out, after transitioning, pre, post, or during, or after realizing that our orientation has changed in some way. And so I'll start with the opening comment. So early in my queer, because I came out as queer first, gay queer first, and then I came out as trans after. I went through a whole shit ton of bullshit. So I endured conversion therapy. I went through it twice. Family rejection, systemic erasure. Those are all things that queer people discover that makes us feel that survival itself feels like betrayal. So as a trans woman who finally experienced gender euphoria, it carries guilt for those who didn't. And so, or in Brandon's case, a gay person who finds love remembers all of the friends they lost, especially if you grew up in the 80s. You know, there were gay friends that were dying from AIDS. The AIDS epidemic in the 80s created this guilt of surviving into happiness that causes. Pleasure becomes contaminated by that guilt, a feeling that the happiness you experience now might dishonor memories that you had before. It does for me. You know, or one's own traumatized past self who couldn't imagine the future. Because I can tell you, when I was in my 20s, if you've read my biography, in my 20s, I had that stupid Wendy voice in the back of my head, and I kept telling the Wendy voice to shut the fuck up because I don't want to talk with you or deal with you. So what I had to do was I had to reframe joy as a memorial practice. So living as a woman honors those who couldn't, transforming survival into testimony. I had to create rituals that basically held that survival into testimony. And then, you know, I regularly toasted to people that I knew in the past that aren't experiencing what I experience now to get past that guilt. And so I hate to say this, but the most political thing that you can do is be happy. Brandon?
Well, when I first kind of realized I was gay and started going online and meeting guys and things like that, I I didn't think I'd ever be able to have a intimate relationship with another guy because I grew up in a very religious, conservative household, and there was no way that they were ever going to accept me bringing a guy home, you know. And but I still was attracted to guys. I still wanted to experience, what it was like to be with a guy, at least sexually. And so most of my um, encounters were not relationships. They were, one night stands and things like that. And so it was, I kind of just resolved that I was never going to have a relationship with a guy. I was going to have to just live alone, and have any kind of relationships in secret, because I didn't feel like I could be have a relationship publicly with a guy. And then, of course, then I tried to go back and be quote unquote normal and had a girlfriend for a little while. We never had sex or anything, but um, I broke up with her after several months because I knew it wasn't going to work. But when I finally did come out, well, I finally did accept myself as being gay. I didn't have like a big coming out kind of thing. I came out to individual people, a friend of mine, and just gradually here and there. But eventually, my dad asked me point blank if I was gay, and I told him yeah. And at the time, I had a boyfriend that they knew. My parents knew that he existed, but they knew I had talked about him a little bit, but they didn't know the extent of our relationship or anything. And of course, when I told him I was gay, he said if I ever brought a guy home for a family dinner or whatever, that we'd be the only two there because no one else would show up. And after he died, I wouldn't get anything from him, or at least not as much as my siblings or whatever. So it was basically what I expected. I mean, and it didn't surprise me at all. A lot of people say they don't want to come out because they wouldn't be accepted or whatever, and then when they do, their parents say, "Oh, we love you no matter what," and whatever. That doesn't always happen, and it didn't happen with me. It's kind of a fairy tale Hollywood kind of story. I see lots of movies where, people come out to their parents and it ends up being a lot better than they thought it would be, but that's not always the case. So I'm still, I'm not in a relationship now, and because my last boyfriend died 2019, so it's been almost 7 years ago, I guess. But I'm not. I definitely want another. I want to be in a relationship. I want to find intimacy again. But sometimes that's difficult, sorting through all the dating apps and trying to find somebody that really that you connect with. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, Jinx, your turn.
Well, as far as being a young person, I kind of always knew that I was a woman, despite being raised as a boy. Um, my mother, I think, just ignored it. Honestly, she didn't really do much about it. She didn't say things about it, and that was okay. She allowed me to express myself, although I think I embarrassed my parents a lot. My father, not so much. He got very irritated at my feminine behavior, would poke fun at my feminine behavior. So I did a lot of things growing up to either just irritate my parents on purpose or just out of, kind of a rebellious nature. I know when I got to high school, it kind of came to a head. I had some pretty traumatic experiences in high school that made me scared to be myself. I got beat up a couple of times, not by people I went to school with, surprisingly, but from other schools that, come to our football games or something like that. And I got into one final argument with my father after having an encounter, which, he would classify as a homosexual encounter that had disgusted him and made him very angry. Needless to say, a lot of family violence ensued. And I was kind of set on a path that I didn't want to go on, which made me have to present cis heteronormative, against my wishes. And I tried really hard to suppress those feelings. I tried very, fervently to be a cis man. And I couldn't do it. But I did anyway. So I eventually pushed myself into joining the military, thinking that serving my country, being in uniform, all that would kind of keep me contained in the little box that everybody wanted me to be in. But evidently, it didn't work. So here I am.
Sarah?
Hmm. I'd say that growing up, it was more about me having to accept the fact that anything that I was doing that was outside of what was considered acceptable by my dad was just going to be addressed with shame and ridicule. And I mean, from the time that I was an infant, he was poking fun at me for being too serious. But just that on its own kind of pushed me away from him in terms of like any kind of support or anything like that. So things that came up later on in life that, questioning things or, anything that I was considering, it was obvious that if it was outside of what he considered normal, he wasn't going to accept it. It was just going to result in more shame, more of him making fun of me. Yeah, he actually had a song that he would sing to make fun of me for being serious. And up through high school, like he'd sing it in front of my friends and shit like that. Until I finally realized that the only way that I could get him to stop singing it was for me to just not react to it. Which is why I can just go deadpan and not react to things, because I had to. So, there's things that were outside of our control that he just would try to shame us out of, which makes opening up to people difficult.
Yeah, not to call Sarah out, but Jinx is probably not aware of this, but Sarah is I'm just going to use the word baby butch. So she's just come out recently, so she's having a newness of experience. So the thing you talked about, Jinx, going into the military, that goes right into the next topic, which is the performance of normalcy versus the actual authentic desire. So if you're one of those not smart people that read my biography, and you shouldn't have, because my biography is a piece of shit, And if anybody posts it to the chat, I'm going to be mad. But as a trans person, I spent years performing desire that I never felt. You know, I went through that hyper-masculine phase where there's no fucking way I'm gay. There's no fucking way I'm... Oh, we lost Jinx. I hope she comes back. You know, there she goes. You're back. We lost you for like a half a second. But, you know, I went through that hyper-masculine phase. I was a martial arts competitor when I was a kid, and I would purposefully, in my 20s, get myself beaten to death because that would quiet the voice that was in the back of my head. And it would shut the voice up. And so, but after years of that performance, the authentic signal of desire becomes illegible. I mean, what would that even look like? What did I actually want? What kind of relationship did I want? What actually feels good versus what was I trained to believe felt good? And pleasure becomes a foreign language at that point, spoken with someone who has an entirely different accent than I do. And so what I had to do was I had to practice desire literacy through experimentation. You know, I could create yes, no, maybe lists about my sensory experiences. Did I want to be touched this way? Did I want to be touched that way? I had to give myself permission for desires to be contradictory and even evolving and or even surprising to what I had come up with when I was younger. And so, you know, my therapist had to tell me, you have to give yourself permission to go and do X or Y. And there's no reason for you not to feel that way. And there's no reason for you not to want to experience that. And so what I told myself, Brandon, if you know this, you can call me out for it. But what I kept telling myself, it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are, which is an E. Cummings quote. Because it's very true. Yeah, I think the intimacy that I wanted, the emotional and physical experience that I wanted was entirely different to what I was believed, you know, what I was told. This is what you do and this is how you do it. Brandon.
Well, when I like I said before, when I was in my 20s, after having a few experiences with guys, I dated a female for several months, trying to be as I was expected to be, you know, get married to a woman, have a family, and live happily ever after and all that. But I knew it wouldn't work because, well, partly I was attracted to her male cousin more than I was to her. So that would make family gatherings a little awkward, if nothing else. But I probably could have done it if I really wanted to, I guess. I don't know, but it would have made both of us miserable. The first time when I was younger, the first time I had any kind of feelings towards someone else, like as far as sexually, it was with a boy in my class. And I didn't know it. I really didn't know it at the time. I just, when I look back at it, I realized, oh, okay, well, there it was. That's the one that started. But at the time, I didn't even know what sex was really. I just knew. I think I've talked about this in a live before, but I invited him over for a sleepover and changing clothes when we were going to bed. I wanted to see him in his underwear. I, you know, I and I guess I didn't know. I don't think I really knew why at the time. I was just curious and kind of attracted in some way. But looking back now, I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of interesting to look back and see the signs that you either didn't realize or suppressed or whatever it was. But yeah, there were several times throughout, when I was in junior high and we started dressing out for gym, that's the first time we started taking showers and stuff after gym class. And I had to try really hard not to look at the other guys when they were going to the shower and stuff like that, and trying to seem straight. And there were only one or two times I asked a girl to be my girlfriend, and that was just the thing that you did. That was what boys were supposed to do. But I never did have a girlfriend throughout high school. I was pretty much a loner. It was just easier to do that than, because if I had close relationships with other guys, they would realize, figure it out. And sometimes, they did. There were a couple rumors, people speculating that I might be gay or whatever. But of course, I denied any of that. But so, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember where I was going with that. But did I respond correctly to your point?
There is no right or wrong answer. I don't. Jinx.
Sorry about that. I keep forgetting I'm muting myself. Kind of elaborating on what I was saying before, I had got a lot of pressure, mostly from family, a little bit on the outside from friends or friend groups, but more on the family side of things. Trying to present masculine when you don't feel that way is like having an itch on the inside. You can't scratch it. There's no way to get to it, but it's always there. And it's like a burning feeling that you can't really get past. So playing sports, like I still to this day enjoy sports, but like my parents wanted me to play, football. They wanted me to play, rugged sports, which I hated. They did convince me to join the wrestling team in high school. And, for obvious reasons, wrestling with a bunch of dudes in skin tight clothing was kind of fun. But so, as far as, my sexuality, I never really had any questions of that. I've always considered myself to be like, bisexual or pansexual. I didn't know what pansexual was, obviously, in the 80s and 90s, but I had heard of bi. It was like, we're people who like both. And I was like, oh, that's me. I like both. So I guess I never really had a lot of internal struggle as far as sexuality. I know my dad was never thrilled with the idea of me being intimate with a guy. He proved that in my, freshman year. But that is not really what shaped a lot of my struggle. My struggle came from the fact that anytime I was with a guy, people saw that as, me being gay. And I was like, I don't see it that way because I'm not a guy. I'm a girl. So, and then, when I was with women, they saw that as, oh, it's just another heteronormative relationship. I'm like, well, no, it's not, So I got a lot of pushback and a lot of nonsense that came from that too. But forcing myself through the better part of my life to conform, if you will, to the different standards that are out there as it pertains to cis heteronormative behavior was a big struggle for me. It caused me to become angry. It made me resentful towards other people for being happy. And it wasn't until I met my third ex-wife that she was finally open enough to have conversations with me about those things. And honestly, it was those conversations and her kindness that allowed me to start to re-explore who I really was. I didn't come out officially as a transgender woman until I was 39 years old. And then I didn't really tell anybody else until I was 40. And it was probably 6, 7 months after that that I started transitioning, like medically. So it was a really difficult time for me. I'd spent, honestly, the largest portion of my life performing as a masculine presenting person for everybody else. I didn't know what to expect. The good news is, though, a lot of it came naturally. So once I stopped pretending to be this big, tough, masculine person and just started being myself, everyone started perceiving me more feminine anyway. So, and that's, for me, that was the end goal.
Yeah, I'm just going to be honest with you. I got you by 6 years. It hit me at 46, and then it went downhill from there. So, Sarah?
I mean, trying to figure out where I need to go from here and what I want, and trying to convince myself that I don't have to prove that I deserve what I want is kind of where I'm at now. After being in a heteronormative relationship for 22 years and raising a child for 20 years, it's difficult to see anything other than that and think that I deserve. I don't know that deserve. Trying to figure out what I want that's outside of what I've experienced is difficult at best. and I find myself, always have found myself feeling like I need to provide value into all of my relationships, whether that, I've found that every single one of the hobbies that I do is me doing that. It's me trying to make sure that I'm a valuable asset to, the people that are in my life, and it kind of makes me want to kick myself. But kind of to Brandon, what Brandon was talking about, the more I look back at my past, the more clarity I see in terms of this was always there. It was just something that I heavily repressed because I knew it wasn't going to be accepted. I was pointedly asked the other day about if there was anybody when I was younger that I was attracted to that was the same sex, and there was. And I don't know if it was mutual or not. I can tell you that she ended up being very toxic. I can tell you that if I ever mentioned to her that there was a guy that I was ever interested in, she made a move on him. And then by the time we were almost done with high school, I was trying to distance myself from that friendship, but it was difficult because we all had the same friends. So I got accused of trying to break up the friend group and make people choose sides. So when we graduated, it was my opportunity to run and not look back. And so I've just completely distanced myself from her.
There's an inherent fear. I have experienced it. I'm sure y'all have too. In the visibility of pleasure. So the thing that trauma teaches you is that visibility equals vulnerability. And so being seen, I was a reinvent in Vegas last week. And at the end of reInvent on Wednesday, the MGM Grand hosted a rodeo convention, and I became much more visible, much more visible, and in scary ways. And so, when you're seen in joy, my partner was with me. We were holding hands at the casino. We were hugging and kissing on each other. My partner is as much or more trans even than I am. She's been transitioning for longer. But pleasure becomes safe in private. And you feel split because when you're visible, you could become a target. I got T-slurred and gay slurred repeatedly in the MGM Grand Casino for Wednesday, Thursday, going into Friday before I left Vegas. And so that division is exhausting. It's painful. So what I had to do when I started out was graduated visibility. So strategic moments where I felt okay to hold my partner's hand, whoever that was at the time. Going to only queer affirming spaces. It's funny, when I go to my sister's room, which is the more of popular sapphic bars in Atlanta, all the butches hit on me like crazy, and it's funny. It's a hilarious adventure, but that's euphoric. You experience that, then you feel like it's okay to be more visible. But the reality of that is that there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you that you don't tell people. And so you have to be visible, and you have to be vulnerable with that visibility so that you can experience joy. Brandon.
When I was with my last boyfriend, a lot of it was a long distance relationship. And when I was where he lived, I had no problem showing affection and that kind of thing. We could hold hands in public because I knew I would not run into anyone that I knew. And like going to Pride Fest, I'm completely comfortable there. I don't mind that anybody that knows that I'm gay, because I know partly everybody else is there kind of for the same reason, and that I'm never going to run into anybody I know there, like as far as my family or people that I grew up with, my friends or anything like that. Old friends, I guess. But it is kind of difficult thinking about the future, and if I were to meet someone in my area right now and be in a relationship, will I be able to go out with him in this area where I know, where a lot of my family is and people I know? I don't know how that will look, how that will work. And I'll cross that bridge when I get there, I guess. But yeah, it's obviously growing up, I tried to appear straight, and I kind of relate to some of what Jinx was talking about when about this, because my dad wanted me to play basketball, and I wasn't into sports, and I wasn't into what most guys my age were into, the all the jock kind of stuff, and all of their kind of interests. In elementary school, most of my friends were girls, and um, and that carried over through into high school. I was friends, kind of. I would say I was more acquaintances with a couple guys because we didn't hang out after school. It was just, there was a guy in band that I was kind of we were friends while we were in school, but we didn't hang out outside of school or anything like that. Because I think if we would have, he would have known that I was gay. I'm sure, because I did think he was attractive. So if we would have spent more time with each other, I'm sure he would have picked up on that. But yeah, as far as exposure, um, public exposure with intimacy and that kind of thing, I don't know. I don't know how that will look and how I'll handle that when it comes to it. It's kind of up in the air right now. I've thought a little bit about it, but I don't know. I try not to stress about things that aren't happening yet. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point in putting all that pressure and stress on myself if it's a situation that'll never even happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, so I'm just gonna wait and see, because I don't know what if I meet a guy and we're compatible and we want to be in a relationship. I don't know what his situation will be. I don't know what his family is like or how accepting they are, or there's a lot of different things that could come into play. So I'll just wait and see.
James, your turn.
As far as issues, I've had many. I know when I was younger, as far as being intimate with people, I struggled to be intimate with, obviously, men, because of the pariah that comes with it. Didn't stop me. It just made it very difficult and it made me very uncomfortable because I didn't feel like I could be, happy in public without causing issues or getting screamed at, or the sneers, or obviously the slurs. The slurs are pretty common, especially in the 90s. As I was forcing masculinity on myself and staying in cis heteronormative relationships, intimacy actually got really hard for me. The longer I pushed the feelings I had inside down, or the deeper I pushed them, the less that intimacy was even appealing. I hated my body. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I sound. So it made me just want to avoid intimate interactions. Now, I just say, I could blame having 3 ex-wives in the military. That's a pretty common reason to have lots of ex-spouses. The military tends to ruin relationships. But I know deep down, one of the primary reasons my first 2 marriages failed was because I could not be intimate. And my intimacy was very sporadic. And then I would get upset or even agitated when they would push for more intimacy or wanted me to be more romantic or whatever the case was. I just never felt comfortable doing so. As I got older, I'd kind of given thought when I learned what asexual was, if maybe that was the problem, but it's not. Like, I am not asexual. I just had a big issue with who I was and how I presented, and performance issues generally ensued because of those feelings. Now, with my third ex-wife, as I had stated before, she had helped me kind of work through a lot of those things to get me to at least start questioning why I had intimacy issues or why I had problems getting close to people. It's one of the things that kind of started my exploration, or re-exploration, if you will. So I know now that I'm presenting myself and I get to be me and I don't hate what I see when I look in the mirror, intimacy has gotten a little easier. It's kind of like a learning curve. I've had to start over. So
Right.
trying to relearn, who I am, what all this is going to entail, and then how intimacy is going to work as a trans woman. Because it's very different. being intimate now is a lot different than it was, when I was younger and, presenting more masculine. Whether it's with women, because I am still sapphic, or with men. Men treat me very differently than they did when I was masculine presenting. So it's trying to relearn kind of all this. It's been a very big struggle. But thankfully, I've started building a community of people that are obviously like me, where I can talk to them and see what they've done. So it's a work in progress.
I I resonate with your comments about previous relationships. Gizmo's mom, my ex-wife, I did not have sex with this person more than 10 times in a double-digit year of marriage with her. And I funnily tell people Gizmo was an IVF child in vitro. And so I remember going to the fertilization day or whatever, and the girl showed me into the room, and she was like, there's a TV and there's magazines in there, and work that out. And I remember walking in and opening the drawer and picking up one of the magazines and going, oh, this is all straight porn. This isn't going to work. And so I opened the door and I had the receptacle, and she's like, are you done? And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. And she's like, oh, we have another room for that. Here, just walk across the hall. So yeah, that was, even at that point in my life, I was going through that. But Sarah?
Well, I can say that I don't really have a whole lot of experience with relationships because I've only ever had one. And that's the one I'm coming out of currently. But I have found that in the past year, I've been actively trying to make myself more visible, even if it's like stereotypical, like keeping my hair short and, continuing to dress the way that I've pretty much always dressed. But something that came to mind that happened a few weeks ago, I was at the store with my child, and there was a lot of people. So they were walking behind me, and I kind of held my hand out like we're doing the elephant thing where, trunks and tails. And they grabbed my hand, and when we got past the people, they walked next to me and decided to just continue holding my hand. And, we're not in a relationship or anything, but we're two queer people out in public holding hands. And that kind of, I don't know, it felt powerful.
It has that feeling. You get to a point where you reach the moment where you have to reclaim your own internalized sense of eroticism. Queer and trans sexualities have been pathologized, criminalized, demonized, reduced to an act that is recognized as integral to the identity. Cultural violence against queer people has been something that's gone on for a very long time. And so, it's because of that we have people like Audre Lorde. God, I love that woman. Many people learn to make their desires small or apologetic or invisible. It shouldn't be that way. Reclaiming that pleasure after the systemic shaming isn't personal healing alone. It's a cultural resurrection. It's a process. There's a learning curve. You have to come out of it. But you are reassembling a self from fragments that were deliberately scattered because of how you were raised or what environment you grew up in. And so for me personally, I had to study. I literally broke it down. I was reading queer fiction constantly, and I was watching queer media constantly. And yeah, I watched But I'm a Cheerleader like 80 fucking times. I love that movie. I love that movie. Oh my God, that movie, The Birdcage. Who doesn't love The Birdcage? Who hasn't ever seen that? And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. But you know, the poetry, the art, pick up Sappho's writings, the Greek female philosopher Sappho's, which is where the word sapphic comes from. Read that literature, and you expand that eroticism beyond sexuality to include all manner of experiences of aliveness, sensory pleasure from foods, the creativity flow of making art, the connection of deep conversation, the power of moving yourself freely and openly around everyone that's around you. And then in some small way, you come back to yourself and you say, I want this. I like that. That feels good when that happens to me. And recognize that the capacity to feel that is a direct measure of healing. I mean, I don't see how anyone could see it any other way. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest intimate feelings. Brandon?
Well, first, I wanted to acknowledge Jinx's dog. I realized just a minute ago I didn't notice there was a dog back there, and I guess it lifted its head up and was looking around. It's like, oh, what a cute dog.
I actually have two. Got one back here.
Well, I did.
And then one back
Yeah.
here.
Okay. It looks like a cute one. Speaking of, we mentioned movies and stuff, but I started watching not too long ago. I was watching a few episodes of a show called Boots. Have you seen that or heard of it?
Yep.
Jinx was talking about military and everything, and it made me think of that because it's about this gay guy. I think it took place. It's set in the 90s, and it was when you weren't allowed to be gay and go into the Marines. And this gay kid just out of high school, needs a change in his life and stuff, and so he goes into the Marines. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of a dramedy, but anyway. So one thing I was thinking about was that I've never really been comfortable with outward displays of intimacy, around other people, like especially like in public and things like that. And it doesn't have anything to do with being gay or queer or anything for me. It's just growing up, my family, they were not physically loving. We didn't hug, kiss, that kind of thing, even in our own homes or anything. I never saw my parents holding hands or anything when we were out. And I think it was just kind of almost inherited that I didn't express love physically out in the open. And it's something that I realized that I missed, that I would like. I want to be physically intimate with someone. But growing up, I didn't really realize that there was anything different. I didn't have anything to compare it to, I guess, really. I mean, I would have watched TV and stuff like that, but watching like Leave It to Beaver, that you never see Ward and June very physically intimate, or even Mike and Carol Brady. They didn't do much. You didn't see much between them, and so that was kind of the norm for me. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that I want it, that I'm missing it. So yeah, but as far as being as open in public, I don't know. I mean, I would hold hands with a boyfriend in public. That I would be fine with that. But yeah, it's not something I put a lot of importance on. Like I need for people to see that I'm in a relationship with a guy or whatever. But I'm also not necessarily afraid of it. I don't know. It depends on the situation, I guess.
Well, as a person with my partner would tell you, I have a giant June cleaver fetish. Don't walk into my kitchen or I will fuck your world up. Sarah's going to find out at the end of the week because she's coming to my house for the weekend. But
That's going to be a hard adjustment.
So Jinx?
Well, I know at the beginning of my transition, when I first started and it came out and I began accepting myself, I know I kind of boy moded for like the first 9 months to a year after I started taking HRT. And to be quite honest, I felt like even more scared to do anything that involved relationships or intimacy, and definitely didn't want to show what was happening in public. So, like, the more my face softened, the more, well, things started happening down here. I just wore bigger and baggier clothing because I didn't want anyone to know. Obviously, you get to a point where you can't really hide it anymore because people start going like, "Hey, why are your eyebrows darker than they used to be?" It's just like things you don't notice. Um, silly things like that. Or, you know, I had one person walk up and say, "Wow, your ass is really big." Thanks, I guess. Um, so the changes were starting to become a little bit too noticeable. So I kind of worked a little bit with my wife at the time. Like, so I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, how do I start presenting more feminine? I'd let my hair grow out quite a bit. Um, she'd help me try on things like wigs, dresses. Of course, your body is just all cattywampus. Nothing fits right. Everything's just odd. Nothing's going on up top, but your trunk obviously is really big for some reason. So trying to find things that look feminine and fit and don't make you look stupid was extremely awkward. I hated every minute of it. And it wasn't until I was like, listen, everyone goes through this. Even females who identify as girls or women start off feeling awkward, and the whole world, they think, hates them. So I was no different, and I certainly wasn't special in that aspect. So I just kind of sucked it up, and I went. My wife at the time convinced me to go to a concert, openly presenting feminine for the first time. I had been working on my voice, which I was kind of happy with. So it's just like an opportunity for me to go practice that. And it was really the first time I felt comfortable holding my wife's hand and being intimate with her in public as I started presenting feminine. And it was like it was an amazing feeling. That's the best way I could put it. I felt really good. I felt like, this is the way it's supposed to be. So it was scary at first, but I took that step. I went out there. People told me I looked really good. That was obviously trans. So that's what I had. A good friend is like, "You were obviously trans." And I was like, "Yeah, I get it. I don't meet your standards, whatever the case, but I still felt good." People were very kind. They complimented me on my voice. I was like, oh wow, yay. So, and it's been just going on from there. The more I've transitioned, the longer I've been on this journey, the easier things have become for me. Now, I have no issues being intimate with either women or men in public. Um, I will say that I don't know why, but for some reason, I guess lesbian appearing relationships don't get picked on as much in public spaces as maybe, I don't know. It's just what I've been experiencing. Um, but when I present with men, everyone just assumes it's just a cis heteronormative relationship at that point. I was like, I mean, it is, and it's not. But, whatever.
Sarah?
I remember growing up seeing my parents when I was young, and it was always my mom showing affection to my dad, her always reaching for him, never in public, but him never reaching for her, never initiating affection. And that's not that's something that I didn't intentionally emulate. But I've, like, during the process of separating from my soon-to-be ex, he initiated an embrace without asking first. Like, we were in the process of, emotionally separating, financially separating. We're still cohabitating. But he initiated an embrace without asking, and it was not a great experience. And I've found that since then I have recoiled from touch just because of that experience, and it bothers me because I want to be comfortable with that, and I want to be able to embrace other people and be embraced back, and just for it to be reciprocal.
Yeah, I think that, we're right at the hour, so we're going to close it up, go around the table one more time. But I will say this. Every moment that you allow yourself to feel good, joy, pleasure, is a middle finger to everyone else who ever tried to break you. For me personally, that was a large number of people. People who wanted you to be small and scared and suffering and living in guilt and shame. Your pleasure, that's the revenge plot that they didn't see coming. And now when they're like, what the fuck do I do with it? So you give yourself permission. Stop apologizing for being alive and loving it. I quit doing it a long time ago. The dead and the people who would attack you, they don't need that. They don't need your guilt. They sure as hell don't need your shame. They need us to live as fucking hard as we can at this. And that isn't selfish. That's survival growing a set of teeth. Joy is dangerous precisely because no one can take it away from you. So feel everything, touch everything, and be happy. Brandon, you have anything to close?
Like we said we talked a little bit about intimacy and what it means to everyone the other day. And as we said, there are many different types of intimacy, and it looks different for everybody. But
yeah, if it gets me tied up, and there's a lot of people in the room, and okay, never mind.
Right. Sarah, you're gonna have fun this weekend, aren't you?
Oh boy.
But Yeah, I understand like for some people the need to express that intimacy publicly to kind of to be free to do that. But I also don't think like for me it doesn't I don't need that. I don't need people to see that or to be a part of it even. I want to be able to free I want to be able to feel free to express that intimacy if I want to with another guy in public, but I also don't have the um, I don't know. I just I don't feel the need for it. It's something that belongs to me, to us together, and so I guess it just depends on how you how you view it and what you how you want to express it and who you want to be a part of it. I think it's different for everybody. That's how I view it for myself.
James?
I guess as far as a good closing statement, a good friend of mine that I used to do a lot of live streams with once kind of put it like this: being a trans person, and I guess being a queer person in general, is like living your entire life with a rock in your shoe. And you go through your entire life with this pain that you can't describe and you can't really tell people because they can't see it. And it just bothers you. And one day you're sitting in the gym with your friend and you're like, you know what? My feet really hurt. I wish they didn't hurt so much. And your friend says, you know, it sounds like you got a rock in your shoe. Maybe you should just take the fucking rock out of your shoe. And you think to yourself, wow, I can't take the rock out of my shoe. Even though secretly you've been on YouTube for 2 years watching other people who've taken the rock out of their shoe and how happy they are when they do it, you just figured you couldn't do it yourself.
Right.
And you know, that stuck with me throughout my transition. It was a lot like just living with a rock in my shoe. And until, you know, I think now I'm like, wow, why didn't I take the rock out sooner? You know, and I know why. I mean, ultimately it's fear and, you know, the kind of oppressive behaviors of other people in our lives. But yeah, I guess if I could go back in time, I would just tell myself, hey, you're going to be fine. Take your time with it. That's, you know, the best I have as far as a closing statement goes.
Good enough for me. Sarah?
I don't think I have anything definitive enough for a closing statement.
Really? Okay, fine. You're going to make me do it. All right. So just to update everybody, we'll do Trauma Live again on Monday. Brandon, you wanna do the topic?
Me? Well, yeah, I can.
Okay. Jinx, do you want to come back to Trauma Live?
Yeah, I'd like to be a guest again. Thank you.
Well, we have a regular member who is having FFS done today.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So
Yay.
she's going to be out of commission for a few weeks.
Yeah, I remember FFS. It was, oof.
Right. Right. She's not going to be camera worthy for a while, and so
Hopefully, we'll have some updates next week.
yeah, I don't imagine we're going to hear from her today. So
No.
All right. Well, Brandon, you're on the hook for Trauma Live on Monday. Jinx, if you join, I'll send you the link before. Usually, what we do if Miranda joins, she's in Denver. Sarah's the one that subs out when Miranda comes in, because Miranda and Brandon and I are the original Trauma band. But then the fourth place is always randomly chosen. So even after Onyx decides to come back into regular play, I could still host you for Trauma Live once a week if you were interested, and I would gladly enjoy that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help out in any way I can.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. We have a good band and it's fun. So And nobody's gayer than Brandon.
I don't know about that, but
I gotta say, I'm not sure. There's some weekends I have fond memories of.
Oh, I think you're in the right crew now. I can see how this is going to go. So with that, for everybody that was watching, thank you all for watching. I will, by the way,
What happened?
I think
am I still here? Okay.
Yeah.
You're
I'll cut
frozen.
the
It looked like
live stream and drop a proton
looked like she
link
jumped in the pool or
to
something.
the live for everybody. So with that, we'll end and go out. Thank you, everybody. Come back next week.